This is Continuum Drag, a weekly podcast where we watch sci-fi, fantasy, and everything in between.
This week, Project U.F.O, episodes 1 and 6.
How many UFO sightings have you investigated?
We've lost count. The project has looked into over 12,000.
And I suppose a fair number of them are unexplained.
Yes, ma'am. Roughly 30%.
Well, thank you for the dinner. It was very thoughtful.
Welcome to Continuum Drag, the podcast that saw the wheel. I'm Luke, here with my co-host Jordan. What's real, Jordan?
That whole saw the wheel thing's a little intense, huh?
What does that mean that Ezekiel saw the wheel? I figured you would know.
It's I do generally know.
I mean, you dropped out of seminary school, so...
Yeah, that's right. That's pretty good. It's based on a prophecy from Ezekiel, where this is who was one of the prophets in the Old Testament, the Bible, or the Talmud, and it's just like a weird prophecy vision where it's like, we don't really know what it means, but he mentions seeing these wheels and there's faces in them and something in heaven. So people have interpreted it to meaning different things. I think it's supposed to mean the power of God or something, but I think it's also this idea. People have taken this idea that this prophet actually saw something physically flying up in the air, and I think that's what they're trying to play on. Is that like, hey, guess what? Aliens been around a long time.
Yeah, Ezekiel,
I think that's really what it's supposed to be. Yeah, he saw him, and you guys all believe Ezekiel.
You guys remember Ezekiel, right?
Yeah, yeah. So it is a weird thing, and I don't know if it's funny. I'm more. This is a real cool thing. I'm more familiar with like the old country song. Like Woody Guthrie did a version of it, and I know Johnny Cash did a cover of it. Like there's a song, "The Wheels of Ezekiel," I think it's called. And so I was like, oh, yeah, that. And I was like, oh, I guess they're not referring to that song.
You were hoping that'd be the theme song, maybe?
Yeah, that's the theme song, but no, not so much.
Well, now that we've sort of teased what we're getting into here.
Oh, I forgot we haven't even talked about what the show is. What a terrible opening.
Well, this year, as we've mentioned in our sort of preamble and our announcements coming back, we're going to be watching multiple season series. So series that went on for more than one season. First time for us. We've only ever watched single season shows.
Yeah, but this wasn't. I think this is a good way to ease us in, because this wasn't like a show that had like 10 seasons or something.
No, only two. So just as a little reminder, if you didn't listen to all that other junk we put out, here's how it's going to work. We're not going to watch the whole season. We're going to do a little sampler of it. We're going to like fly by the series, just have a little peek at it. Which that means is we're going to watch the pilot, we're going to watch the series finale, and then we're going to watch the top 3 episodes of each season, unless we eject or whatever we do on this show. But that's the idea. So we're going to get into our first multi-season series now, the 1978 NBC series, Project U.F.O.
Although I did see it eventually apparently changed its name to Project Blue Book. When do you think that's going to happen?
Are you sure?
I'm not sure, but even IMDb has it as 2 different titles.
There is a Project Blue Book that came out in like 2018 on the History Channel.
I don't know. Unless it turned to that. I have a feeling it could have just been that maybe when it was aired in another country, maybe they aired it as a different title.
Could be the case.
Yeah.
This is obviously based on the Project Blue Book, so a very famous U.S. Air Force sort of project of looking into UFOs.
Yeah, and that's really what this is. It's like would you say it's fair to say it's a bit of a precursor to the X-Files? Although I would say the tone is wildly different. But basically, two people going out investigating UFOs. That's basically what the show is. I
had the exact same thought, and I was just like, why does Kolchak get all the credit from Chris Carter when clearly I think this was in some ways as influential on him?
Yeah, if you put those two shows together, you get closer to the X-Files than one or the other.
Absolutely. Had you heard of this show before?
No, I don't think I had. I mean, I'm always kind of blown away when we do a new show and it's like these things that have kind of come and gone and just have been mostly forgotten. I'm sure, I'm sorry to some people out there. I'm sure some people will remember, but no, I wasn't familiar with it.
No, neither was I. It was an interesting start to a show. It ran for 2 seasons between February 19th, 1978 and July 12th, 1979, Jordan.
Didn't make the 80s.
This is pure 70s. Pure 70s all the way through.
Yeah, it feels that way too. This is one of the shows I'll say we've watched I think everything from the 60s to now. This show feels even earlier than late 70s to me. Just the feel of it. It's been a while since we've watched things, and it's got a little bit of a plodding pace,
That opening theme song felt very like late 60s, early 70s to me. Very orchestral and like not
That's
ominous
right.
at all. It's kind of just like bombastic.
Bombastic's a good way to describe it.
Well, Jordan, before we get into it, would you like to know what else was happening in the world while this was on television?
I would love to.
I got so much for you.
Yeah, great. Hey, your sister's younger than you, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that maybe you have a sibling that was born during this time, maybe.
I'm afraid not. I'm the oldest, so no one was around in the 70s.
No little Lukettes were around.
What was it like? Was it great back then?
I wasn't born. Come on now.
Well, here's what was happening in the world, Jordan. In 1978, I'm going to start there because there's 2 years we have to go through here. February 27th, the first global positioning satellite was launched.
Oh, okay. Now, what is that? What does a global positioning satellite do specifically?
It's
Do you know?
thing on your phone that kind of tells you where you are in the world. You're able to ping off something, and it's able to be like, you're about here.
Understood. Oh, that's pretty interesting. I'm sure there's like 8 billion of them now.
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't super accurate, but it's probably like accurate enough. March 8th, the first episode of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy radio play premieres.
Oh, I wonder, was that in England? You think?
Yeah, that's a BBC production. Have you ever heard it?
Yeah. No, never heard. Never did. Did you?
Yeah, I used to work night shifts at a gas station, and the college radio station one year just like played them all over the course of like a few weeks. So I would just listen to them at the gas station.
How was it?
It was good. It's actually very good.
Oh, that's fun.
May 25th, first Unabomber attack.
Ooh, the Unabomber. I remember how off that drawing was to what he actually looked like. Ted Kaczynski, right?
It was just a man in a hood with sunglasses. It could have been anybody.
Yeah, but then you saw him and he was like an old dude with like a long beard and stuff. I was like, he didn't have a beard in that drawing. He didn't have like leaves in his hair.
He wasn't talking to a squirrel.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we can all laugh about it now.
Yeah, it's all fine now. It all worked out.
Except for the person with their arm blown off.
September 28th, Pope John Paul I dies after 33 days in popedom.
Which Pope died? Pope John
Paul the First.
The first. Yeah, I don't remember that guy. Well, I wouldn't have. He was dead before I got there.
I honestly thought I thought John Paul II, because that was the Pope I grew up with. I assumed he was like the second. The first one was like from like hundreds of years ago. I had no idea till I read this that the first one was like in 1978, died after 33 days.
They're just like, let's quick redo.
Yeah, October 19th, sequel to the Pope installed.
He hated that. He hated being called sequel to the Pope.
It's
That's
so
one thing I
funny.
know about him.
I had no idea that like 3 weeks later, it's like, here's number 2. It's fine. We'll keep going.
You know, it's funny. I don't think I knew that either. It usually is that where you're like, hey, remember Pope liturgy? Guess what? You're number 2. He was from 500 years ago.
Yeah, that's what you'd expect.
Also, I came up with the worst name ever. Pope liturgy. There's no Pope liturgy.
No, but you'll get there one day, Jordan.
Yeah, here's hoping. If I can get my Ezekiel test right on.
All right. Here is 1979 for you, Jordan. In March, the Voyager 1 probe passes Jupiter.
Mm-hmm.
April 7th, the first Mobile Suit Gundam episode premieres. You're a big Gundam fan.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know those big robots, the big anime robots.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know what that is.
They're everywhere here. There's like huge statues of them in like train stations here in Korea.
Oh, they're big. People
They're
love
big.
them?
You make a lot. I think you can get a lot of like model kits.
Oh, okay, sure. I mean, maybe if I saw them, I'd know 'em, but as per the conversation we were having before we recorded, I apparently missed a lot of things.
You even missed this. May 21st, the Montreal Canadiens win their 4th consecutive Stanley Cup.
I knew that, yeah.
4 in a row. Good for them, Jordan.
Well, they've won the most. You know, they've been around.
I don't know anything about them.
They're the oldest. They're like, they've won the most, yeah.
I have a feeling this is something else you'll know a lot about.
Yeah.
June 4th, Canada's youngest prime minister takes office.
Joe Clark. Yeah, that's right.
I knew
And
you'd know.
Also was in very short time. I don't know if our shortest prime minister ever in, but
Who was our shortest,
very
do you
short.
think?
It was either him or Kim Campbell. Oh no, I think someone actually died very shortly. But I think
Oh, right. I forgot about Prime Minister Pope John Paul I.
that's right. Pope John Paul I, prime minister, he died very quickly. But yeah, Joe Clark wasn't in very long, less than a year, I think.
June 15th. McDonald's Happy Meal is introduced.
Oh, weird! Isn't that weird? I was reading a thing on that one time about the advertising plan for the Happy Meal. What was the Happy Meal always? You may not have this information. Was it always like a multi-option, or did it start with like just a little hamburger for kids? That would be my guess.
Do not have that information.
Yeah, because I bet you it was like pre like chicken nuggets. I bet they didn't even have those.
Yeah, no, there's no way chicken nuggets existed in the 70s.
These kids don't know. They don't know how lucky they are.
June 22nd, The Muppet Movie is released.
Oh, the Muppet Movie. Have you went back and tried rewatching that?
I'm not 100% sure I've seen it to begin with.
It's surprisingly slow. Part of it's just the time it was released. I remember I was rewatching part of it. I was like, God, just get to the Muppets.
I thought you were going to say it doesn't hold up because of all the racism.
That I don't remember. I couldn't speak to that. But I mean, Kermit does drop a few choice words.
July 1st, Sony Walkman goes on sale in Japan.
Oh wow! This was a real time. This everything was just setting up for the 80s.
Everything's firsts in these 70s and 80s. Everything's like coming into play.
Mm-hmm. We got satellites. There was people eating Happy Meals while plugging in their Walkman.
And I think this is the most important one, Jordan. July 12th, Disco Demolition Night goes awry, forcing the White Sox to forfeit their game to the Detroit Tigers.
Oh, I don't know what that is. Disco Demolition Night. That sounds like a real story, but I don't know what that is.
I looked into it because I thought of like, what on earth is Disco Demolition Night and how did it go awry?
Can I guess what it is?
Yes.
It's the end of disco's not popular anymore. The decade's coming to an end. It was more popular to trash disco, and I bet it was like a fun thing that they have people bring their records or something to get smushed or something like that. And I'm guessing the smushing got out of control. That's my guess. Or people just threw records on the pitch.
You are almost exactly correct.
Yeah, is that right? What happened?
It was a doubleheader, apparently. To get people to come out to the White Sox game because they've been having a bad few years. They're like, disco sucks. Bring your disco records and we will blow them up in the infield.
Oh, man.
Between the two games. And as the first game started, it was record numbers of people there. And they just started hucking additional records at the players, which wasn't good. They had to wear their helmets on the field because they were just like records whizzing by their heads.
Yeah, there's a reason you can't bring stuff to stadiums anymore. People can't be trusted, especially not with disc-related items.
So many people were excited about this idea that the gates were overcrowded with people trying to get in. So they sent security to deal with the gates. And then at that like kind of between game period, they went and put all this dynamite or whatever underneath the records on the field, blew it up, and as soon as it exploded, the people in the stands just poured onto the infield and just started a riot.
I can't believe I don't know about this. Sounds like a good time. Good time at the old game.
It was a really amazing Wikipedia entry, I'll tell you that.
And so they never did play that second game, huh?
No. The White Sox kept trying to reschedule, but the league was like, no, you fucked it up. You're giving it to the Detroit Tigers get it. And I think the Detroit Tigers were beating them so badly, like they didn't need any more wins, but they got them.
Oh, man. That's a good story. I wish there was more things at like sports arenas where they're just like, we're gonna blow things up. But I can't think of like a genre of music that's so reviled now. You know, bring all your trip hop albums.
You don't like trip hop, Jordan?
No, I'm just saying. I'm trying to think of a genre that it would be very weird to get very angry about.
I was trying to imagine them blowing stuff up with explosives in the infield between games. Like, don't you need to keep that grass clear?
Someone wasn't thinking about it.
All right. Well, let's keep going, Jordan. I'm done with the dates, but there were two Oscar ceremonies in between this. I know how you like to guess who the best pictures were. So you've got 78 and you got 79.
Oh, you know what? late 70s is hard for me to remember. Who won the... I'm pretty sure Gandhi won in 80. 78 and 79. I think 77 was Kramer versus Kramer. I don't remember who won 78, 79. I actually don't know.
It's
I don't
Annie
know who won Best
Hall
Picture. Oh, Annie Hall. Okay.
and The Deer Hunter.
Deer Hunter. Yeah. Yeah. They're both good movies.
There you go. I mean, it's funny. You might have guessed the two around them, so it's interesting that you couldn't get those two.
I just couldn't remember those years.
All right, and one last thing for us, Jordan.
I was still reeling from that White Sox game, you know?
All right, one last thing for us, Jordan.
Hmm.
There are 3 TV series we have covered in Continuum Drag while Project U.F.O. is on the air. Can you guess them?
3 TV shows. One would be... Wasn't Galactica 1980 on in late 70s?
No, because that would have been 1980.
I thought maybe they started it before 1980. I don't know why. So what else will we have watched? Let me cheat and just so I can remind myself shows we watched because I never actually...
They're your top 3 shows, I think.
They're my top 3 shows?
Yeah, I think so.
Automan?
No.
No, that would be in 80s, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that would have been 80s.
Man, oh man, Luke, I can't even remember one episode of one show we've done. Let's say, Come Back, Mrs. Noah.
That's correct.
Hey, I got one. Let's say, Planet of the Apes was over, right?
No, yeah, not Planet of the Apes.
Okay, and then let me take one more guess. I'm gonna guess, I was gonna say Techor. There's no way. Beyond Westworld.
No, I'm afraid not. It was Come Back, Mrs. Noah,
Yeah.
Quark,
Oh, Quark.
and Supertrain.
Supertrain. I was just talking to someone about Supertrain. I said it's not as fun as it sounds. Literally, I said it's not as fun as it sounds. Just watch the Dick Van Dyke episode. I think that's fair, right?
Yeah, it's very reasonable, I'd say.
Yeah.
All right, you ready to get into this?
Let's do it.
Enough fuffing around. Here's the IMDb summary for episode 1, Sighting 4001, the Washington, D.C. incident.
Mm-hmm.
A woman on a Virginia farm reports a strange object in her yard and a robot-like creature which communicates with her. A U.S. Air Force pilot chases a UFO and dies.
2 quick things. I don't know if you noticed, but the person who plays Major Jake Gatlin, one of the 2 investigators, is William Jordan, and he played Joseph Oppenheimer in Beyond Westworld. Do you recognize him?
Oh,
Slightly younger version.
I forgot about that.
Mm-hmm. So this is his second series with us.
In a major role, too.
Mm-hmm, in a major role. Although from based on just looking at IMDb, it doesn't look like he's going to stay on the show because he has less episodes than the other dude.
Staff Sergeant Harry Fitz.
Yeah, that's right. Harry Fitz. Yeah, one's a staff sergeant, one's a major.
Yes,
That's what you need to know.
Major Jake Gatlin, Staff Sergeant Harry Fitz. They both work for Project Blue Book, and they'll be, I guess, sort of our leads on the show. They don't have much personality-wise. Fitz is kind of a southern ladies' man.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? In 2 episodes we've now watched that we'll talk about, you don't really... They're sort of interchangeable. Like, if you just think about, like, dialogue on the page, there's nothing that specific. You're right, we get a little bit with Harry. Like, in the 2nd episode, he's doing dance lessons, and there's a few things, but they're pretty interchangeable, and there's nothing that evocative about either of these characters. It's more about they're a vehicle to get us to this fantastical world of UFOs.
Yeah, they drive the plot with, like, interviews of suspects and witnesses and things, but not too much character other than, southern ladies' man and, I guess, like, the boss.
Yeah. Although, again, even between that, like, do you even really get a sense that one's the boss and one's not? Not much.
I think that Major Gatlin is a real boss energy.
Do you think so?
He's got that boss energy, Jordan.
Do you have boss energy?
I don't know. You tell me.
I don't know if you have boss energy. I mean, I haven't seen you in a boss situation.
Do I have southern ladies' man energy?
You have that, definitely.
Oh, great.
You don't even have to
Thank
ask.
you. Thanks, y'all.
That's a classic Oprah where it's like she's just speaking with a normal vernacular, but then she adds in like y'all or something. You're like, wait a minute, you're not of the people.
Anyway, this show starts with a cold open of 3 consecutive UFO sightings. A glowing orb appears over a farm and freaks all the little animals out.
Mm-hmm.
Then a driver on a highway in the pouring rain pulls over to light a smoke when he's fire in the sky.
That's right. That's right. That's a good example.
Yeah, it's just like a big glowing orb flies up and shakes his truck around. It's exactly like the scene from Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, a surprisingly terrifying movie.
And finally, a UFO lands in front of a woman's house. And all of this sort of happens between Kentucky and Virginia. And it's very funny. This only happens in the first episode, so I guess they phased it out pretty quickly. But every time they change locations, you get a very police procedural style, like June 25th, 7 a.m., Virginia.
Yeah. What I like, though, is that they keep getting, again, something that the X-Files did. In a slightly different way, but it's still like a lower third kind of like text. But it just keeps telling you all these different parts. But like, I don't know these areas. They're like West Virginia, Central Virginia. I'm like, you could just say Virginia. Is there that much of a difference? Maybe people living there have like, don't you dare say I'm from West Virginia when I'm from Central Virginia. But I was like, close enough. I don't know.
There are so many of them, it bordered on parody.
Yeah. Well, because I started writing them all down, but I gave up after like the first 4.
I bet they do it 15 times minimum.
Yeah. Oh, and we should say, though, the episode starts, Luke, with, I guess, the same screen message that's on every episode, at least the 2 we watched, which is there's like a blue screen with text, and it says, "This program is a dramatization inspired by official reports of governmental investigations of claims of reported sightings of unidentified flying objects on file in the National Archives of the United States." I like that's a disclaimer. So you just know that this is based on something. It's not real.
Official, Jordan.
It's based on something.
Very official. Mm-hmm. At any rate, we then go to a Washington, D.C. radar station, which picks up a UFO in its airspace. They have this commercial airliner that's flying nearby come down and even do a visual confirmation of it. There's like this little glowing football-shaped orb out in the sky. So they scramble jets from a local Air Force base to chase it down. And, of course, once they get in the air, one of the jets, of course, has some strange hydraulic failure.
Yeah. They just kept saying hydraulic, but there was something specific, but it had to do with hydraulics. That's what you need to know.
But the other plane of the 2 they sent up, it pursues the UFO as the UFO begins to quickly ascend well above the jet's, I guess, elevation cap. It can't go higher than a certain level. And the radar site loses traces of this UFO on the radar, but this pilot keeps reporting that he can see it visually. He's going after it. He's going to keep pursuing it upward. And then as he does, his canopy to his jet just explodes off the top of the jet. His face mask rips off, and next thing we know is we see these construction workers gawking as the jet flies straight down into the ground and explodes in a fiery burst of flames.
And obviously they're intercutting with like studio, a guy in a plane in studio with some footage of plane up in the air mixed with model work. Like the model doesn't quite work in terms of when it's falling and stuff, but I thought it was pretty well done. Like it's as close to seamless in these shows as I've seen before.
For a show from the 70s that we've watched that's using clearly some stock footage, far better edited than a lot of the shows we've seen.
Yeah, this thing is not the most impressive explosion, but it all works pretty well.
At any rate, this brings Project Blue Book into it because obviously there's so many UFO reports, even some from the U.S. Air Force themselves. So they're going. They've interviewed the driver who is menaced in that truck, and then they're sent out to Washington to figure out what's happened with this crash landing. And all indications from the crash site seem like the pilot didn't even attempt to eject, which means he must have explosively decompressed in the air. There's a lot of questions, basically. They don't know what happened on the road. They don't know what happened in the sky. There's a lot of questions, and it finally brings them to the woman who reported the UFO landing on her lawn, and we get like an absolutely fantastic flashback of her memories of that night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I should say that's an interesting thing they do because the opening of this is essentially a cold opening, but what you get is a snippet of everything that has happened, and then when they come back to investigate and interview these people, it gets fleshed out and you see the same thing but a longer version of what happened to each of these people.
And everyone we've seen in these flashbacks, with the exception of this one woman, it's always a glowing orb. It's never very clear, but for her, we fully see a gigantic UFO hover over the front yard of her home. and we see it come down, hover above her house, send a little tube out of it to like, a little landing pod basically, in which a like strange, very Johnny Five adjacent kind of robot gets out with like laser fingers.
Yeah, it was really weird because at first I was like, oh, I guess we're just going to see kind of like a fuzzy image of what this is. But yeah, it's a robot comes out. It sort of is like standing in like, it's like arms are up, I guess we want to call them above its head. And then like it's shooting between its hand lasers for reasons.
Just put on a little laser show for her.
Yeah. And she's, we should say she's clutching a Bible. I think they're supposed to be the idea is that she's a woman of faith, and she's not scared of this at all. She's actually seems quite, pretty pleased. It seems, I'd almost say she's just like,
In the flashbacks, I believe we see her say, "Oh, I'm not worried, thank you," and then she explains to them that the robot was communicating with her telepathically to express its peaceful intention. So she was never very worried about it. But she does say, she's like, if your pilot was shot down, he must not have had peaceful intentions because these were peaceful aliens, the ones I met.
Yeah, but she's saying, she basically says that the robot or the ship was somehow sort of telepathically giving her this message. It never actually said anything.
And, now that they've sort of investigated the various sightings that have happened, I believe Sergeant Fitz puts it best with his southern down-home accent, Jordan, when he says, "We got more unanswered questions than a Senate subcommittee."
Ooh, what a hot one. I should say, I was laughing earlier on with it because they kind of sort of interview all the people in a row, and when they talk to the one guy who, the alien, he saw the alien while he was driving, and they go to talk to him in the hospital. He describes what he saw twice, and I think this is how you and I should be describing ourselves. You can pick which way you'd like. One, he says it was a hunk of fire, so you can have people refer to you as a hunk of fire, or a red hot bowling ball.
Oh.
I think either of those are pretty complimentary.
You think those are good nicknames?
Yeah. You could be a hunk of fire if you want.
Red
like,
hot
what's that Luke
bowling
like?
ball,
Oh man, he's a hunk of fire.
And that Jordan, what a red hot bowling ball.
There you go. Yeah.
Sounds like you're like a himbo or something. You're like really hot but kind of stupid.
That's me.
Anyway, back in Washington, D.C., the dead pilot's wife shows up at the base to kind of accuse Major Gatlin of not giving her the whole story around her death of her husband in the sky. And apparently reporters come by her house, told her UFOs might be involved, and like she wants to know what's really happening. And Jordan, really quick though, the reporter who showed up, that was probably Kolchak, right?
That would have been a great crossover. That's funny.
This is an interesting scene in that Major Gatlin is not telling her about the UFOs for sure, but he's also kind of warning her about like being taken advantage of by like exploitative journalists who are coming around. It's a weird thing. It's an interesting character moment because like he's definitely lying to her in that very governmental, like not X-Files, he's not telling you the truth way, but he's also very concerned for her well-being. They walk a weird balance here where like they have to toe the line for the military and they're not going to tell the whole truth, but they also are very sympathetic to everyone they talk to.
Well, I think what I most took from this is you can see a cultural shift in attitude, specifically, I think, towards government, because this show doesn't have that same mistrust in government that the X-Files does less than 15 years later, right? There's just this feeling of the characters, the military's fine. There's secrets, but it's not... There's nothing done in a nefarious way. There's secrets because of secrets, but you're right. His mission is really like an empathetic one, which is interesting. It's a weird tone, and it does feel like it's of a time that I don't remember. So it's like it's sort of alien in its form of just these two characters that I can't quite figure out. Whereas I grew up in a different time, so X-Files makes a little more sense to me.
Well, this is not the same time period, but very contemporaneous with like Kolchak, isn't it? Which is very government distrusting.
It is funny, yeah, because you're right. Like it does feel like my sense was that like this is just a cultural feel, but you make a good point because the Kolchak wasn't. Kolchak was I don't know if it was just him, but it was like a mistrust of everything.
At any rate, things are really going crazy now with this whole UFO thing. The Pentagon has requested an immediate report from Project Blue Book, and the evidence all seems to point to a single reconnaissance craft that has come down and so far does not appear to be a threat. That said, they want to be safe, so the Pentagon's going to put the Air Force on standby for DEFCON 3.
It's not DEFCON 4, so it's fine.
And it's not DEFCON 3, so people are safe from Kanye.
Nice.
That's going to be real dated when this comes out. At any rate, we get a funny scene, though, when basically Gatlin goes, he talks to the Pentagon, they're like, we're going to go on DEFCON 3, and then they fly him back to the Air Force base they're working out of on a little helicopter. As the helicopter's landing, Sergeant Fitz is waiting for his boss to come back, and this like just Air Force technician just sitting there on a Jeep watching the helicopter come in with Fitz, and the Air Force technician like turns to Fitz and he's like, "Hey, that's the old Pentagon Express. Eh? Was your boss out there at the Pentagon telling him about those UFOs we saw?" And Fitz turns to the man and says, Nah. He was at the Pentagon because he was asking them about that good conduct medal they're getting you for minding your own business."
You know what's funny? I don't even remember that exchange.
It was so funny. He just shuts this guy down so fast.
I'll be honest. I liked when we want to talk about this, I like the next episode better than I like this episode. This episode, it started losing my attention. I'll be honest, and I feel like the end of the episode was a bit of a disappointment. I think we'll just say is I don't think there's a great pilot to start the show.
Well, I think what you're talking about is basically what happens next. There's a bit of a nebulous turn here, which I don't think they set up well, and just sort of happens. And that Major Gatlin has suddenly become kind of skeptical to the idea of the UFO, and he returns to the radar site and asks them to check and do some math and see if maybe the light in the sky might have been reflected from the ground. And then they go from that scene to him going off and going to re-meet all the witnesses again, and they go to the farm where they saw the first one, and he tells them it was a rare weather condition caused by thermal inversions, and then they go see
they keep saying temperature inversion over and over and over, and I was like, this was a real Scully trying to explain something, and you're like, okay, sure. They're like, hey, when you take a flashlight and you shine it into a mirror and it shines somewhere else, that's what you saw.
Yeah, and it kind of comes out of nowhere. It's not like they found evidence or anything. He just starts saying this. They see the guy in the truck, and they explain to him that it was ball lightning that hit his truck. It was just a weird phenomena. Mm-hmm. And then, obviously, the witnesses are pretty skeptical by their, sort of, to the credit of the show, there's well, I don't know if I buy it, but okay, if you say so. With, of course, the woman who swears she saw a UFO land on her front lawn, she in particular is just listen, I know what I saw. It wasn't a weather phenomenon. A UFO landed. I talked to a laser robot. It's not true.
Well, because what we really get is, and this is, I know we have a little bit left to go, but basically they say, they're yeah, the best we could do is this is a weather phenomenon. Anyways, that's basically it. And you're like, what? That's the show? Yeah. That's the episode?
Well, even the lady who's they landed on our farm, she's like, well, they did land here. And they're like, well, we didn't find any radioactive evidence of any thing we could suspect to be, an interstellar craft. She's like, how would you know what the technology of an interstellar craft was? Yeah, it would be so far into the future. And they're like, and it's very weird though, because it's all very amicable. So she challenges them on everything, and they admit some fault. And in the end, they're just they agree to disagree. And they're like, well, let's just enjoy some more lemonade.
It is interesting. Yeah, it's what about all these well-articulated points? They're like, yeah. Anyways, see you later.
Could be right. And just to drive that home, the final scene of it is the Project Blue Book boys. They go and have dinner with that pilot's widow. And they thank her because instead of going to the press and talking about UFOs, apparently she went to when the press talked to her, she just said she trusted the U.S. Army or the U.S. Air Force, and she believes their findings about the whole thing. So it kind of became a non-story because of her bottling it up, I guess. But they talk about how this is sort of, I guess, pilot-y, but they start talking about how they've investigated over 12,000 UFOs, and 30% of them end up being unexplained. And the wife kind of asks as they're wrapping up the dinner, it's were they satisfied with the investigation to her husband's death? And they admit they're not 100% satisfied with the findings, but this is just part of the job. And it's a weird, I think the turn at the end where they just suddenly had answers didn't feel satisfying.
I think you're right. I think that's what it is, that why I was just it seemed like they were investigating, and they're like, anyways, we're just giving up. I'm like, but why are you giving up? Or they're like, or it was that, or as if there was a scene missing where something was revealed that you're right, gave them that turn. But because we didn't have that, it just felt like the third act was them wrapping up something that it's just they didn't have anything to tie it up. It was very odd.
Yeah, they just never found that evidence that got them to the final stage. Like, I would have been fine if it was just like they debunked this one at the end of it for the most part. Like 20% of it was undebunked, but it's just like he just showed up and he was just like temperature inversion. I'm like, where did you get that from?
And so that's why I thought it was a kind of we'll go into this more at the end. But for a pilot, I thought it was a little bit disappointing because it didn't lead us into any direction for where the show was going to go. Because I was like, is this what all the episodes are going to be like? They're going to eventually just go, yeah, none of that happened for reasons that you don't get. I was like, oh, well, I hope that's not what the show is going to be. But then I thought the next episode that we're going to talk about, I thought was a stronger piece of TV.
Yeah, I felt like with the pilot, maybe what they were setting up is just like the formula of just there's going to be an investigation every episode. And unfortunately, they just didn't know how to solve the mystery of this one. So it just ended up being like a bit of a mess at the end.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, they chose these to be the mysteries, so they can't tie it up. That's not my problem.
Jordan, I think it's your fault, though.
Anyways, but episode 6, we're gonna jump 5 hour episodes to see how things have gone, and I think this was a good decision because I do think the show got a little stronger.
Here's the IMDb summary for episode 6: Sighting 4006, the Nevada Desert Incident.
Lieutenant, you related an extraordinary experience to Captain Selvage over at Gold Bar. Now, we may never be able to prove that you saw what you did, but we sure cannot prove you didn't. You were there. We weren't. Now, we're going to dig into it and make sure that no one's trying to make a fool out of you.
Maybe it's gone beyond that already. Maybe I already am.
In Nevada, Major Gatlin and Staff Sergeant Fitz investigate claims of a UFO sighting in the desert.
Oh, and I should say, I think we basically started talking about it at the beginning of this episode with Ezekiel and stuff, but that's how every episode starts, apparently, where they talk about Ezekiel's wheel, and then you see this kind of like ball in like a sort of drawing form, and then it goes into different drawings of
U.F.O.s.
what people think they've seen, and that's how every episode starts. I was like, oh, that's what the opening is. It's a very, I don't know, it's very odd, but that's what they want.
Well, did you notice between episode 1 and episode 6, they slightly tweak the opening and how it goes, so it's a little bit faster.
Is it? I didn't notice.
And I believe in the opening, the first episode, they like show the photos one by one. They like cut to them, and this one they kind of just like pan past them all really quickly, and then like the words Project U.F.O just fly past the camera.
Right. Yeah, speed it up, guys. Speed it up.
Also, I don't know if this was in the pilot. I only noticed it in the 6th episode. But did you notice the producer who's come on board the show?
No, I didn't. Who was that?
It's a retired Air Force colonel is now credited as a producer on the show.
Oh, that's right. I saw that too. It has that little like RET, and I was like, oh, that's funny. I like that they have to add that in. Just like, don't worry, he's retired.
Anyway, this episode's cold open is with a Lieutenant Paul Staley.
Mm-hmm. And we have him basically. We see right away he's in the desert. He's waking up in his car. He's clearly slept there overnight, or at least for some amount of time. We see that he's in the military of some sort because he's wearing his uniform. And he sort of looks like he pulled over because he was tired. He goes to start his car, but it won't start. Like, it won't turn over. And then right when his car is not being able to start, he sees over in the distance there's some sort of like, I guess we'll just keep calling it UFO. It looks very different than what we saw, I think, in the previous episode. This is more like
it's a real Millennium Falcon.
Yeah, but like mixed with like Mad Max or something, and it sort of seems to be have landed in the desert, and it's kicking up dust as it sort of takes off. That's what he sees. Yeah,
and it's great. This like really mechanical UFO takes off, and then it splits into 5 separate UFOs, real saucer section style. It's just like it splits into 5, flies over his car, and then later when he repeats this story, we'll see more of the flashback. And we'll just explain it now. But like after he sees it sort of fly by, he goes and looks around the desert, and he finds like scorch marks in the desert stand. And when he tries to touch it, they're really hot, and he's just like, "What have I seen?" Gets back in his car, drives to the nearest Air Force base, and basically reports the sighting, which of course ends up immediately on Project Blue Book's desk.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and I should really quickly say he in this, I don't know if it's in this part or in later flashback, he does try to go take a photo, but he realizes he doesn't have any film for his camera. So he has no evidence. Basically, he's left, other than the evidence that should be there in the desert, he doesn't have anything to substantiate his claims.
It's only his word. Mm-hmm. And of course, Project Blue Book heads out to L.A., to the home of this Mr. Staley, this Lieutenant Staley. I believe I said it was Lieutenant. I can't remember anymore.
Yeah, I love how casual it is when they go to interview him. It's so 70s. He's just got like, I can't remember if he's smoking, but he's just got like a nice sweater vest on, and but it's him at his home, his wife and his father-in-law, who immediately you get the sense he's a little bit confrontational.
Yeah. His father-in-law is there. The father-in-law is a doctor and former Korean war surgeon. I guess he was in a MASH unit, Jordan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't remember him from MASH, but.
And basically, when the Project Blue Book guys show up to interview Staley, his father-in-law is just like, "Hey, listen, guys, I called in a favor from an old pal in the Air Force, and they said I could sit in on your interview with my son-in-law, so I'm gonna just sit here." And they're like, "Okay, a little weird, but go for it, I guess."
Yeah, and so they do interview him, and basically he does tell them. This is where we get the flashback, and he basically tells them what had happened, which is, I think he was leaving his base.
Yeah, he was just finished 48 hours of Air Force survival school.
Yeah, and were they celebrating that specifically?
Yes. They had been 48 hours in the desert. They had a little toast as he was leaving, but he wanted to get back to LA to see his wife.
Yeah, so he kind of drives, kind of knowing that he'll just pull over if he gets tired, which is what had happened. He pulled over to I don't know if he was going to sleep the whole night or catch a few hours sleep, but he did fall asleep, and then we see a longer version of this UFO kind of split apart and stuff. I do like the way they did the one shot, though, when he went to sleep. You see in the rear view mirror just like a multicolor kind of flashing.
Yeah, a little
and
rainbow.
It's like and it's shining on his face. I actually thought the effect was pretty cool. Basically, what we get from this scene is you just get the characters, what their stance is, that this guy really just wants to prove that he did see a UFO. His wife seems unsure of. She's sort of indifferent. She's ambivalent to the kind of this whole thing. She just seems to not really want to be there, and the father-in-law seems very cagey and does not want this interview really happening, or wants it to be very careful about what is said.
The father-in-law is because here's what happens. They end the interview, and I also thought that it was going to be like the father-in-law wants the son-in-law to like keep his mouth shut. But the father-in-law has Staley walk him to his car, and as they're walking there, we kind of learn that Staley's planning to retire from the Air Force. His term's up. He's just a reservist. He doesn't have to stay in it. And he basically has got an offer to be a reporter in Denver. He's more interested in doing that. But the father-in-law really wants him to consider, he thinks civilian life is very unstable, and they both agree. It's very funny. They're both talking. They're like, we both agree, though, right? We don't want my daughter to have to work for a living, right? And Staley's like, of course not. Of course not. I wouldn't want a woman to work, 100%.
Yeah.
But the father-in-law, where I thought he was going to be like, just keep your mouth shut so you can like get a good military job, he's just like, listen, you saw a UFO. We have to use this to your advantage. I can get you a great job because you saw a UFO in the Army. You're gonna move up in the Army because you saw that UFO. And I was like, what?
Well, it's interesting, because he does want him to keep his mouth shut, but not in the way you think. He wants him to kind of keep his mouth shut because he thinks this is some sort of usable information that he can. I don't know if it's the idea is that he's gonna like blackmail is not the right word, but use it in some way to be able to move up the ranks. I don't know exactly what the idea was.
This will be on the tip of everyone's tongue. He's like, Staley saw a UFO. They'll be like, whoa, let's give him a great job.
Yeah, it was like something to that effect. But there's this. You get the idea that there's a real push and pull, specifically with the wife, between these two men.
Yeah. The two men in her life have differing opinions of what Staley should be doing.
But right around here, I actually thought this is what made this episode more interesting. It really becomes, in some ways, the point of this episode, which is how much of a credible witness he is. What's his name? Staley. Because immediately when they go out to have their conversation, the father-in-law and Staley out in the on the driveway, the two Air Force guys. What's their name? Harry and Jake. They're just like having a coffee in the kitchen, and they notice there's a bookshelf, and every book on the bookshelf, I'm pretty sure every single one, is about UFOs.
Yeah, you got like a dozen UFO books.
Yeah, so they're like, oh, we've been called here to investigate a UFO sighting from someone who is obsessed with UFOs. And so it does start making this interesting dynamic between, should we as viewers even believe what we have seen?
Well, and even the next day, the Project Blue Book boys get some sketches from Staley. He's like, he drew up what the UFO he saw was, and they're immediately like, notice something weird about his sketches? They're all from the top down. Like, he wouldn't have seen it from the top down. Why did he draw it that way? So that sort of keeps getting amplified. Of like, is he a reliable witness?
Mm-hmm.
And they even get a request from his Air Force base. Staley didn't tell them this, but apparently he put in a request to have a hearing board called to verify his claim. So Staley himself has been asked to be like put on trial to prove his own claims. Like, this man has something to prove here.
Yeah, and they're just like, and I think it's a couple scenes in, they actually they show up when he's like arriving at the office or whatever, and they sort of show up without telling him. They're like, so when he arrives, they're there. They're like, "What's the deal, man? Why are you not being like straightforward with us?" And he's like, "I'm Staley. What do you expect from me?"
Well, I believe the scene you're talking about is Staley goes to visit his wife at her job at the UCLA, the one
is that what it was?
The one that they don't want her to have anymore.
We don't want to have to work.
And when he walks into her office, the Project Blue Book guys are interviewing her, and he gets quite upset and feels like they're trying to discredit him by asking his wife if he's crazy.
Yeah, that's right. That's why they do go. They're like, we should go check his mental state to see if he's cuckoo. But they do also mention that he's cuckoo. That he's passed all his whatever tests the military make you do to show that you're of sound mind.
But it was really funny after this is the sort of subplot of this is that Staley and his wife leave the office, they go for a little walk, and immediately get in a fight that they clearly have had multiple times about her father and how he's constantly trying to dictate what they do with their lives. And it's very funny because it's like, she doesn't see it at all. She's like, no, Daddy just wants what's best for us. You should just listen and do whatever he says.
Yeah, it's funny because then he's just like, and they even imply that she's like, "What, are you gonna leave again like last time?" I was like, "Ooh, this has been a tumultuous relationship."
Yeah, a lot of stress put on them by this father-in-law who's a little bit too pushy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But as you said, like as Project Blue Book continues to investigate, Staley is basically the best of the best in the U.S. Air Force. Like, passes his test grade. Everyone thinks he's like an up-and-comer. It's too bad he's leaving to be a civilian. And they even take Staley out to the site where he saw the UFOs landing, but they really can't find any evidence of anything there. It's just, winds blowing everything over. But even still, they're surprisingly like sympathetic to him not having evidence.
Well, yeah, it's interesting because he sort of goes out of his way, or had gone out of his way, to make himself the least credible witness ever. Like, they almost seem, the Project Blue Book boys, Blue Book, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you're right. They almost seem so sympathetic and want to help him. Like, they're the ones pushing, like, do you have any evidence? And it's almost like he's been shooting himself in the foot the whole time. They're like, whereabouts did you mark where the ship was? He's like, no, I was around here. And they're like, okay, did you do anything so we can know where those hotspots were? They're like, nope. Like, oh, anything you can help us? Did you mark like which direction it went? He's like, no. Well, how would I have known? Aliens. And they're like, okay.
He's a pretty hostile witness overall.
Yeah.
At any rate, Staley is sort of brought back to the Air Force Base to discuss this hearing he's requested about his, like, I guess his credibility. He's really putting himself on trial about. And they're kind of warning him, it's like, you don't have to do this. No one is insisting you like prove this UFO sighting you're doing, and it's going to expose him to a lot of scrutiny, basically. And his commanding officer.
Does he say why he is so desperate to do this, other than he just wants to be heard? Because I'm assuming he's made a report, so his superiors know of this. But does he explicitly say why he's so desperate for this specific type of hearing?
He doesn't explicitly say it. The implication seems to be that he really wants to prove himself. Like, he really wants to prove he's not crazy and he's not a liar. Like, he feels like this is so insane, he needs to show everyone that, like, he is a credible witness.
Well, see, that's what I thought, but don't you think that's interesting? Because no one really, even his father-in-law, no one seems to, like, go, you're crazy. Like no one has an aggressive or contrary opinion to him. So it seemed I just didn't know why we needed that. What was propelling him? Because no one was against him. They're just like, yeah, I guess you did see an alien anyway.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, whatever the reason is so internal that we never see it.
Right. Anyways, the point is we are going to get that scene of him sort of not defending himself, but explaining what he saw and sort of in a court-like case. But what's weird again is that like he didn't like bring anything. He didn't like really even like do any sort of due diligence. He's just like, that's my story. Anyways.
Well, before he gets to the court case, though, he goes to see his superior officers, warning him, maybe he doesn't want to do this. And he's like, I really want to do it. And he's like, well, here's the list of impartial jurors we've gathered for your trial. And he picks it up and he's like, my father-in-law's on this. And he's like, oh, yeah, your father-in-law muscled his way onto this jury, but we can kick him off if you want. And Staley's still like, nah, it's fine. Let him stay. I'm like, oh, what is happening, Staley?
Yeah, he's like, don't worry about it. My evidence is so strong. I'm not worried about it at all. They're like, what evidence do you have? He's like, nothing.
Well, and at this point, too, it seems like the father-in-law is probably there to, like, help Staley out. But that all goes sideways in the next scene because we cut to his wife seeing her father in his greenhouse. And he is just machinating all over the place. He's got a captain position set up for Staley in LA, so he never has to leave. He's like talking to his daughter. He's just like, I just want to make sure that my little girl can be as entitled and as privileged as she wants to be. That's what you deserve. That's what you deserve, honey. Your mom, she was never comfortable being titled and deserving. I hated her for it, but you love it. You love it. And like he literally badmouths her mom and then calls her a spoiled little brat. And she's like, oh, daddy, I love you so much.
Yeah, the wife does not get the greatest role in this episode. She's just dumb and doesn't seem to care to know what's happening at all.
Yeah, she's just daddy's little girl.
Yeah. Because even we're like, I'll say there's a scene near I think right after this court case, which we're going to talk about, where basically they have like he gives her an ultimatum and he's just like, that's it, like it's me or your father, and she's just like, really? I don't know. I guess like dad's pretty great. And he's like, all right, I'm out of here.
She can't choose, George. You can't choose.
Yeah.
But Staley walks into this greenhouse scene and he's basically like to his father-in-law. He's just like, why didn't you tell me you were on my jury? And he's just like, oops, I forgot.
Yeah. Oopsie daisy. That's on me.
And then Staley basically announces, he's like, I'm taking the reporter job in Denver. I want my wife to come with me. Like, that's what's happening. And the father-in-law is just like, hey, well, it's your life, I guess. I guess you can do whatever you want. There's nothing I could possibly do about it, eh? Nothing at all.
Yeah, he's like, don't worry. I'm not gonna be making some big and justice for all speech in this court hearing.
And like we literally like hard cut to the end of the trial. We don't see any of the trial. We cut to the end of the trial, and like the guy who's running is like, well, maybe we should take a little break. And the father-in-law says, he's like, no, let me speak first.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, I mean, you're saying trial. I don't think it's a trial as much as they said a hearing. So I think it's basically just like witnesses, but because Staley's the only witness, I don't know what it could have been. But it is weird that there's a jury, and secondly, that I don't know anything about military hearings. But yes, that can the members of the jury just make big long speeches like they're the defense lawyer? It's very bizarre. But anyways, he does and not only does he make a big speech, he makes very good points. And sort of essentially undermines all Staley's credibility is what he does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're good points, but they're certainly like leading points. He basically, he proceeds to accuse Staley of being too tired and too drunk to determine what a UFO was.
You know what? I'm going to be on the father-in-law's side because of this. Because Staley decided, one, he's going to tell the story, fine, but he was going to then be adamant about giving all his points, which he did. He apparently had said he hadn't been drinking, which he had. I don't know why he just didn't mention, I had a drink before I left. So, point father-in-law. He was tired, which is another point he made. He did draw the top of the ships. That also coincidentally looked like drawings in his book that he mentioned. Also true. He didn't know the location of where the ship was. He conveniently forgot his film. And he also didn't mention to anybody in the court hearing that he was going to take a job that was on TV. And the father-in-law, as you're right, sort of implies or leads them to sort of say that like he thinks this is going to be like his his sort of like cachet is like, I'm gonna be the news reporter that saw the alien. That's somehow gonna like help his career. I don't know how it could, but that's what the father-in-law sort of submits as evidence.
Yeah, he spins a tale that this man is just a con artist who's trying to like get on TV, and basically it works. The final determination comes in, and Staley's basically painted as a liar, pants on fire.
Yeah, but again, I will say, we've seen the evidence as a viewer that he did see this UFO, but he's the worst person at defending himself ever.
I mean, his defense is that he's a good officer, everyone likes him, and that like he has no reason to lie about it.
Right.
But not anymore. Now everyone thinks he's a liar. He's some sort of freak show out of the army trying to get into civilian life. And this is the point where you're talking where Staley gets out and he's like distraught because like his father-in-law just mercilessly destroyed his reputation. And it's so funny. His daughter shows up and she's just like, well, I don't see how Daddy could have done that.
Yeah, she's consistent to the end.
And basically, it ends in divorce right there in the lobby. But there's a small mercy for Staley, though he doesn't get to see it. But what's our friend's name here?
We got Major Jake Gatlin and Staff Sergeant Harry Fitz.
Yes, Major Gatlin. He storms over, livid about the absolute character assassination he saw inside of that jury, and basically just tears into the father-in-law and says that like Project Blue Book's going to be looking into his reputation now to see what they can dig up on him.
Yeah, it was a good scene, and I thought well acted. And it was a good scene in the episode where it's like, I think one of the few times we've really seen the personality of one of our two leads in the show, which surprisingly you just don't get in either of these episodes. It's like it's just odd to me how little we get of them. It's the story is really the focus is on the whatever the story is of the episode. Yeah.
It's more like these are standalone short stories, but there's just like these two are like follow through characters. They don't need a lot of background. I guess it's not dissimilar to some cop shows I think that like exist where it's just like the crime is the plot, and then there's just these sort of background characters happening.
Right.
It is interesting that this time they do have a weird like thing where they're like, hey, we aren't going to use the hearings findings. We don't think they're accurate, but we're going to have to file this case under a true unknown, implying that maybe in these episodes they always like file the case as like unknown or solved. Like maybe there's like the end of these episodes kind of have like a decision made.
Would you say they maybe put them in like an X file?
I think maybe in some sort of X-File somewhere they might end up. And anyway, the whole episode ends with a scene of Staley. He's driving away from the trial. He's going down that same Nevada road where he saw the UFO, and he sort of pulls over in about the same spot he had the encounter. And he gets out and he sees something shimmering in the desert sun. And he goes out there and he finds a big shiny like metal object, very crystalline like, and it's too hot to touch,
it's like this,
but he manages to pick it up.
Orb prism thing. It's like it's not that big. It's probably the size, like a little bit bigger than it's like between the size of like a baseball and a football. But it's like he was really selling that it's very heavy. And like he takes it and he's like, basically it's like he's got his evidence. It looks like it's from a ship. He carries this very heavy thing back to his car, puts it in his car. Of course, car won't start. And there's a lot of like, it's funny because the music is making it seem like there's almost like a ticking. And I was like, is the thing ticking, or is it just the music indicating to us that there's something weird with this little object he's picked up? So he's like kind of staring at it for a while, and then he's just like, well, he picks it up, walks to
just a gorge,
like a cliffside, and then chucks it as far as he can. It kind of hits the side of the edge, rolls down, keeps rolling, goes to the very bottom, and then just immediately explodes. And I like just before, as he's throwing it, I don't know if it's right after it exploded or right before he throws, he's like, they won't believe me anyways. I was like, I don't know. You did have possibly some futuristic alien technology. They may have to believe you.
I did like that scene too, because it makes no sense. Like he picks it up, brings it to his car won't start, obviously. We understand that alien technology stops your car. But his next move is just like, fuck it, I'm just throwing it in a gorge.
Yeah. No, here's my question for you. Did it explode from him throwing it and damaging it? Was it just a time bomb? And if it was a bomb, was it left by aliens to explode? Or like, And did he know that? Like, it was just, I was like, what a weird thing to add to, like, as a button on an episode.
I think they added into the score that like weird. It was like the sound of a busy signal on your phone. That's what I kept thinking.
Right.
Like I was like, what a weird tone to put in your score about whatever it's about aliens. I think they added that ticking tone to attempt to explain like, oh, LG was a bomb. I think they just shot that scene, and then when it was done, they're like, I don't think the scene makes any sense. Let's maybe make it seem like it was a bomb or something.
Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, it's again, I think this is a better episode than the last one, but it was such a weird thing at the end for like, I don't think him throwing it was motivated. I don't understand why it exploded. That wasn't motivated. And it also doesn't, like, that's the last scene of the episode. So they're just like, oh, well, that was a thing.
You're supposed to know. It's like, well, he almost had the evidence, but whatever. What are you going to do about it? That's the life.
Yeah, it blew up. Anyways, he's a reporter now.
All right, Jordan, do you have any final thoughts on these episodes? Do you want to get to ratings?
Let's rate him.
All right, Jordan, what do you want to give to Sighting 4001, Washington, D.C. incident?
Yeah, I thought it was an okay episode. I like the premise of the show. I think it looks pretty good. I like the how the robot looked and the ships and everything. I just thought, from the kind of reasons we were saying, the third act of this is weak at best, and I think it kind of undermines the rest of the episode because it's just so nebulous and so kind of pointless. So I can't give it more than a 6.
Oh wow, I agree. I think the plot falls apart at the end for sure, but I think the alien effects are really cool. I think the kickoff to the premise really works. Like, even like, we didn't really talk about the visual effects, but like the alien ship visual effects, the robot, like,
it does look really good.
Everything looks really cool. These characters are, loose at best, but they're two interesting guys. I don't dislike them. I enjoyed the pilot. I'm gonna give it a 7.
A 7, huh?
And then what about Sighting 4006, Nevada Desert Incident?
Well, I'm gonna give this one a 7. I've gone up 1 point. I don't think it quite gets that much further, but there was things of this I really liked. I really liked the turn of right at the beginning, even though we've seen the guy see the UFO, that the show sort of undermines that immediately by showing, oh, maybe he's a bit of a kook. And I thought the interplay with the weirdness of the father-in-law and him, and yeah, I just thought this episode worked much better, and I hope this is more similar to what future episodes are going to be. But room to grow, 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think the plot itself was interesting. I think like the weird dynamic between the wife, husband, and the father-in-law was like a little stilted by today's standards, but I think all the actors were really like bringing their A game to the show. U.F.O. once again looked amazing. Like, the budgets for these U.F.O.s are like insane. Like, very different.
I would say especially in this episode, I thought it looked really cool and really different than I think UFOs I've seen I can think of, and also very different than the first episode. And I like just how, I hope that's a thing, that it's always just very different. I don't know if I've seen a thing where a UFO like comes out of the desert and then shoots off into 5 pieces. Like, it was really different. I liked it.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give it a 7 as well. So that's 2 7s for both days for me.
2 7s for you. You think those 2 episodes are the same?
I think they're very similar. I think they both have their weaknesses, but they both have strengths. I think they both. I enjoyed watching them both in a similar way, I think.
Well, I'm looking forward to as we're going to hop around a little bit, because I'm curious to know how much of this format they stay the same, and how much is going to be this sort of I don't want to say like, not Scooby-Doo, but like, something happens, they investigate and try to figure out, because these two, I think the difference really is the first episode, they're like, well, there's no way we can explain this. Whereas in the second episode, they're like, it's almost like, yes, everyone knows it happened, but there's no way for them to prove it. And I think there was maybe that little difference was what made me enjoy it more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first episode was pure investigation. We're just like investigation. Whereas the second episode was like about a man who maybe we could trust, maybe we couldn't, and his like personal life. So it was more of a story about the Staley character, whereas the first one had no character we were really following. It was just like a bunch of evidence.
I think maybe that's what it is. I think I don't want to say a character study, but I think maybe I'm more inclined to a character-based kind of episode as opposed to just sketches of humans that have seen things.
You don't want to just follow a bunch of random clues and get the conclusion. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. At least let's get to something other than I don't know. But we'll see. We'll see what future episodes are.
Well, Jordan, we've already passed over 4 episodes of Project U.F.O. We've already skipped past them already.
Yeah, why not?
So if you, the listener, want more Project U.F.O., if you're missing what was happening between, have we got something for you? We're doing bonus episodes for charity this year. So all the information's on our podcast website. You could find links to it on the social media, or just Google this podcast and you'll find our website somewhere. But the idea is, if you do a donation to one of the charities on our charity list on the website, all of them curated by past guests, and we suggest a donation of $50, but give what you can. We're not going to hold you to that. We'll go back. We'll watch another episode of this. You can pick one of the episodes we missed. We'll go back and watch it. Or if you don't want Project UFO, we'll watch a show that we've already watched before and skipped episodes from, like what Freaky Links, Misfits of Science, something like that. Mm-hmm. You can read all
something where we had jumped ahead, and there are episodes that are still to be viewed.
Yeah, you can read all the details on the website on how you send us a receipt, on how you pick the episode, etc., sending it to the email address. But speaking of the email address, if you have thoughts on Project UFO, you can email us here at continuumdrag@gmail.com. And of course,
have you seen your UFO and then went to a court hearing and your father-in-law undermined your credibility? Let us know.
Yeah, let us know how that job in Denver went. And of course, on Instagram and Twitter, we're going to have clips from these episodes. There's some great UFO stuff. So lots of good UFO stuff on Instagram and Twitter this month, or this week.
Oh, and I should say, we didn't talk about in the first episode, the wife of the pilot who died, who had his canopy ripped off. She is so over the top. It made me laugh every scene. She's just like, I'm selling it. I'm at 11. So it'd be great if there was a clip of her just freaking out.
The handle on social media is @ContinuumDrag if you want to watch that. But that about wraps it up for this episode. So, listener, thank you for joining us. And Jordan, I'll see you next week.
See you then.
Continuum Drag is recorded in Toronto, Ontario, and Seoul, South Korea. Theme music by James Rick Seidler. Produced by Jordan Delick and Luke Black. Special thanks to Aaron Yunes.